Hello, all of you I Can Do Anything podcast listeners. This is Robin Steckel, your host. Today we have Nikki Ryberg on, a career coach, and I am very excited to talk to her today. Welcome to the podcast, Nikki.
Thanks, Robin, for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Why don't you give our listeners a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. So my background was actually in HR. I worked in HR for about 15 years before I pivoted into initially resume writing, which quickly led to career coaching because a lot of folks were like myself in that the field I was in just wasn't like the best fit for me. And I decided there was definitely a labor market need there for folks looking for some additional help on the career side. And I felt like it was a good pairing with my HR background.
How much education did you need to become a career coach?
So I went back for I think it was like a 120-hour course through UW-Madison for like a career certification. It's the GCDF. It's a common one for folks that work in academic advising or career management professionals for like larger organizations. I did that. And then I also did a certified professional career coach class, but that actually fell over the pandemic. So I did all the coursework, but I never did all of the steps to get the actual certification because I had kids that were virtual learning and I was trying to run a business. And a lot of the stuff actually in that course, I felt like I had already learned through the UW one. So it was just like a decision of spend time on this or spend time helping clients and generating revenue. I also have a resume certification. And I have a variety of certifications. I'm actually a big fan. Like when I started, I thought I knew a lot. Like, oh, I looked at resumes for like 10 years. I know all about this. And I quickly realized I didn't. So I've added on a lot of things. So there's a variety of things out there is one thing I discovered. So I don't know if that answered your question. For me, I've definitely invested like several $1,000s into certifications and at least 300 hours probably of different coursework and trainings, in addition to an undergrad in HR and a master's in HR, which I will say I'm biased on this opinion, but I really do feel that that education helps me as well because I'm around all sorts of folks. And sometimes there's ones where I think they're a great fit and other times I'll see some folks where I'm like, well, some of this is a little too pie in the sky. We have to be a little realistic too. So hopefully that answers that.
I have a few certifications myself. What type of continuing education do you need to continue with your business?
Technically nothing. So I'm in an unregulated industry. There is no license requirement to be a career coach. There technically isn't anything to be a resume writer. The bigger, more esteemed writing places, if I wanted to subcontract for them, would require one. And I actually have the less desirable one. That was just happened to be the one that I got. So I'm not required to do anything, but through my GCDF, I do need to do, I think it's 70 hours of continuing ed every 5 years. And so that's definitely something I want to maintain because especially when you're self-employed, when you pay for these certifications yourself, like I am not letting that thing lapse. Like my clients don't care. No one's ever asked me like, Nikki, do you have your GCDF? I did it for myself to be better at what I do. So I continue doing that and taking advantage of things I already put time and money into. Probably at a certain point, maybe that wouldn't make sense for me depending on where my business is at or where my coaching practice is going. But that's definitely something I just feel really strongly about continuing ed, whether you're a career coach or in your field as an employee as well.
In saying that, could any of us go online and come up with a LinkedIn, an Instagram, Facebook, what have you, profile and say, I'm a career coach and not have
Yeah.
any certifications because it's not regulated?
Absolutely. You'll see a lot of people do that. And it's not, so I have like two thoughts on that. Sometimes that's not a bad thing. Like, for instance, you might have someone that really climbed the ladder. They did super, super well, and they learned all of these things along the way, and they want to kind of give back in almost a mentoring way, but their time is valuable. So they do it as a business. Other times you'll have someone do it who just thinks they know a lot, they know nothing, and they really shouldn't be out there giving anyone advice. Like, I mean, I've been in networking situations where I'm like, I wouldn't pay that person to help any one of my friends, my family. Like, there's a lot of charlatans in this field. Career coaching can also be very complementary with life coaching. And so I'm around a lot of folks doing that, and I can quickly tell who the good ones are versus the ones who are just like hanging up their shingle, like, hey, I can do this. So I think I wouldn't necessarily recommend that anyone require a certain certification. If you're looking for a career coach yourself, I would definitely want to see references, testimonials, and just feel them out on a consult to see if they're a good fit or match, and how in depth do they go. If there's a lot of surface level, I could find this on Google, anyone could say this, and they, think they're special, those are the ones that I kind of question, because they're definitely, through my certifications, I do think there is some truth to some of the theory. I mean, there's people with PhDs in this, and there's a lot of research and science that goes into this. So, some folks may have that through a successful 20+ year career, but others didn't do well, and they just think, oh, I'll go do this. This looks easy, and there's a lot of folks in the middle too.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that. Let's say you and I are out at a networking event together, and I say, oh, look at, I'm not even going to use a name. Look at this particular person. What do you think? And you say, Robin, I don't think they're qualified. What would make you say that? What would be a characteristic trait or something that you would say, there's no way I would want you to go work with that person? Is there something that sticks out to you right away that could help others say, yeah, this person really isn't qualified?
Yes, I'm just taking a couple notes here so I remember what I want to cover.
Yes, go
So
ahead.
the first is that I don't trust anyone who says that their way, their methodology, or their very, very expensive program is the only way you're going to land a job or figure out what you want to do. I call those the snake oil salesman. I also do not trust anyone who within 30 seconds of meeting me thinks they're a personality expert and they can tell everything about me based on either some personality thing that they developed themselves or that they paid a lot of money to be certified in. I've sat in networking things where someone was like, oh, I can tell you're this, so that's why you think this, and this is everything. And I'm like, how dare you? You met me for all of 10 seconds, and now you think you're an expert on my life, you think you're an expert on my goals, and you're trying to pretend like you're the only one that can help me. Any solid, good coach knows the client has the answers. They have the answers deep inside themselves, and it's the process of asking the right questions, really going deep, making them think of things they couldn't on their own. So I don't trust anyone where they're like, sign up for this $5,000 program and it's the only way it will work. I'm not saying those aren't good. Some people, and there are job search experts, career coaches, life coaches out there. I've paid my own money for those sort of things when it's needed and I trust the resource. But at first meeting, anyone worth their stuff would never try to push that on you that quickly. And so I'm very leery of folks that try to pretend they know more than they do at a very surface level. The other thing is like, how in depth do they go? Usually through a free consult, you'll get a pretty good idea. Like, do they ask the right questions? Did you learn something new or think of something you wouldn't have otherwise on your own? That's a sign of a good coach for you. If they're just kind of going through their checklist, or maybe they outsource it. A lot of folks outsource sales stuff nowadays, especially in the coaching space. I don't think that's a great fit. Like, unless they have a really, really good person on their team that really understands their methodology, that's one thing. But if it's just some person they're paying, $14 an hour to kind of go through the routine assessment, I would be very leery of that. So I think, and also reputation. I have had clients come to me and they're like, I spent thousands on this person. I got nowhere, and here's where I am. And I'm like, well, let's start. Like, I'm not going to make you redo a bunch of stuff you already did. Let's look at what you have and go from there. Cause I call myself like a scrappy coach. I meet you where you're at, and we try and do it like as quickly as we can to save you money, but being realistic that this stuff takes time. And sometimes they'll have all the fancy brochures and all the lovely things. And I'm like, they ask for like your strengths and weaknesses, your values, like stuff that honestly, I threw out on a free, what do you want to do course on my website. I'm like, this is stuff that I learned as I did my coaching certifications. And frankly, I expect my clients to go out there and do as much as they can for free on their own, because come to me with a baseline so we can get somewhere, because we're going to get there faster and more economically. If that's not an option for them, yeah, I always joke, I'll take your money, I'll hold your hand. Like, I just, I give people options, but when folks have that, I do get like that reputation. I trust that because I'm like, well, I've talked to a few folks that have worked with this person. So they're not a name I give out to refer to others, because I'm like, I've seen the work and they didn't really get the progress. It doesn't mean they're not a great coach. They're just, not a fit for my style or what I would recommend, or sometimes I don't think they're that great. So that hopefully is helpful for folks that are kind of exploring this area.
I recently joined a webinar that you had out there. And by the way, for
Oh.
any listeners, doesn't matter which area you are in or which region you're in, check out Nikki's website and check out the webinars that she offers. I will add those links to the show notes so that we can get that out there. I recently attended a webinar that you were hosting, and it was called I Hate My Job, Now What? And all of our listeners know that I absolutely love my job. I have a wide variety of work. I really do wake up and I'm looking forward to work. I really do enjoy my job. But the title of that webinar really caught my eye because what if you really don't like your work? And I know a lot of people that do not really enjoy their work like I do. And I am blessed to like such a variety of things. And I really get to work with great people. I wasn't attending it for that. Again, the title really caught my eye. I learned something. Even though I love my job, you still always learn something from. I think anytime you go to any type of learning, networking, talking to people, you should always take away some nugget of information. That was a really great webinar. What would you tell somebody like me who really enjoys their job? They're not looking to go up the ladder, they're very happy where they are. What else can you provide in your services that would just enhance the experience?
Oh, that's interesting. I have never really had, that's not true. I do have folks come to me that are happy in their job. Typically, they're either looking for advice on how to get a promotion, how to get headcount added, like they're looking for something. And so typically we're working through the coaching process to help them demonstrate their value and argue that business case for what they're looking for. For someone like you and I'm assuming, are you self-employed? I am.
No,
No, you're
no,
not. Okay.
no. I
Okay.
work for a large a healthcare
Okay.
organization.
Okay, awesome. For folks happy in their job, I guess part of the experience would be, why are you here? What are you looking for? Is there something that you're looking for a little more? Are you looking to dial back in an area? It would be really exploring with them, what is it that brought you here? Because something would have triggered in your gut to be like, I'm going to talk to this career coach, because if everything were perfect, I mean, maybe you would be looking to talk to someone, and then in which case, okay, what's going on? Is there some coworker drama you need to talk through? Are you angling for remote work a couple days a week? Or if everything's just good and you're like, should I be doing anything else? We'd probably be really looking at like certifications, networking, what sort of things are you doing to continue to challenge yourself without it necessarily having to grow up the ladder, because that's not for everyone either. So it would be very individualized, but if you're happy, definitely figuring out, how do we get more of the happy stuff? And is there some stuff you could let go of to give you more time for that?
I love that. And I do think that there are listeners out there who really do enjoy their life and their job. But what else can we do? Because again, you're always going to gain knowledge and little bits of information, no matter who you speak to. So I think that's fantastic. Going down a different path, let's go back to more of what you do, the nitty gritty of the resumes. Take us through. I'm a product of the 1980s, the 1990s, and the 2000s of resumes. I do have what I call a full resume. I believe it's 10 pages. I mean, it literally has every single job, every single task. I just have it because I find it's interesting to go back and look at how far I've grown in my career. But I also have either a one-page resume or a two-page resume because I feel for a particular position, you may need to add some details in your past that you wouldn't necessarily put on every single resume. So I have in the past detailed my resumes for the position that I'm looking for. But can you talk to us through how resumes have changed through the years and what you look for or what you help people with in 2023?
Yes, they have changed so much, even in the time span. I started this business about 5 years ago. What my drafts and like what my work looked like then versus now is night and day because trends continue to change. So I wrote a couple notes. So these are in no particular order to like your question, but let's start with page numbers. This is a very common one that folks ask. I do love having what's almost considered like a master resume. Like you said, like 10 pages, it's got it all on there. I like to see how I've evolved. Maybe I'll need to go back and pick certain things out later based on a job. So I think that's good. Keep your performance reviews, keep a master resume, keep something so you have access to that. But I've had resumes for legit professionals with like a PhD and 10 years of work experience have one page. And I've had other folks, I just did one for an HR professional that had 4 pages. It really depends on, do you have the results and the content that one needs? So it starts with, what are your goals? Like, are you looking to semi-retire and you just want a part-time job? If you hand in like this resume looking amazing, they might think, well, she's going to be bored in like 2 seconds. So you'd want to kind of trim that down. A one pager would be totally appropriate for that situation. On the other hand, if it's internal, same there. They may not need your whole background. They're kind of more focused on, what have you done at the current company? What are some of your accomplishments? What do you bring to the table? So I'd go back to, and I tend to see this as a huge missing link with a lot of clients, is look back at, ideally you have a job ad or you know of an opening coming or you know of a need at a company. Let's assume we're there and you're not trying to like get someone to create something for you, but do you truly understand what that job ad needs? Like, what are they looking for? So some questions I ask is, if you were hired and you're sitting down at your 1-year annual review, how do you think they would measure success? Oftentimes clients are kind of like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, just make some assumptions here. We need to do it kindly. Nobody wants to go into a situation like, I know everything and I know exactly what you're looking for. But those sort of questions are really important because then I challenge them. Are those types of skills and results and your ability to do that demonstrated on your resume? Like, if I look at your resume for 5 to 8 seconds, are those the bolded words? Are those the KPIs that you're focusing on? Are those the certifications you're moving to the top because, for instance, they want a project manager? Do you have that buried down below? It really goes back to, what does the job need? And a lot of folks will say, well, I don't know, these job ads are so, vague or this and that. And that's where I'm like, that's what, to me, networking is for. I think networking has turned into this perception of, you're just asking people for jobs and everyone thinks, oh, I just need to know the right person to put in a good word. 100%. If you have that person and they put in that word, it is going to help you. But you may never get that person. You may just be starting out. You may not be established enough in your field, but talk to someone doing that job at that company, at a competitor, at a similar place, and ask them, what do they need for you to be successful in this role? Like, what sort of things are you measured on? What programs, what skills, what talents, what accomplishments? And as best you can, have those be marketed on your resume. Another thing is colors. This is, a lot of folks will roll their eyes when I tell them, and they're like, everything's like PDF and email nowadays. Nobody cares about this. It's all uploaded in the applicant tracking system. And I'm like, okay, but what if you have this and someone has this beautiful one? who do you think they're going to be more impressed with? And it should match the cover letter. And you think cover letters aren't important. Well, when someone has a very good one marketed towards the employer's needs, instead of reciting their resume, it looks really good. When they have a matching references page to hand out after an interview with some quotes or testimonials on it and something unique that's eye-catching, hands down, good marketing wins every day of the week. Like there's certain stores we shop at because we like how they market towards us. And so when you're on the job search, even if it's internal, external, you do need to market to your audience. So I do think weaving in some colors is great. Live Career is one website that I like. It's not great. Like I'll admit I use it and often take their templates and extract it into Word and do more finessing on it. And I'm not a fan of the 2 columns just because I think it's wasted space. So there's a lot of pretty resumes in like Canva or Live Career where it's like 2 columns and they, you know, it looks great. I do it for like my high school student, but for anyone, even in college, you waste so much space and opportunity to market additional things. So I would stay away from those. I think you can Google it, so don't quote me on like the exact website, but it's called Distinctive Resumes. It's written by a professional resume writer, and she puts her templates out there. Whether you purchase them, I think they're like $12, or whether you just go out there and look and realize, oh my gosh, like my 1980s resume in black and white that looks like it's from a typewriter with like size 8 font really isn't cutting it. Use that for at least some inspiration to be like, okay, how can I, jazz this up? If you pop it into YouTube or LinkedIn, including myself, every other resume writer out there has some tips for you. So spend like the extra 10 to 15 minutes to make it stand out. I think the other key thing is results. People often say, well, I'm not in sales. I don't have access to that information. I don't have enough experience. I'm right now working on my soon to be high school freshman's resume. I said I would do it for him to kind of nudge him along in some of his job search efforts. And, he'll have to help a bit, but I'm like, he has stuff. Like he went from like 3 lawn mowing accounts to 6. Well, he doubled his business year over year. He has certain standardized test scores, like really good at math. We can highlight that. Maybe your first year in the job of flipping fries, you picked up training shifts because you trained others how to do it. Like I worked at McDonald's in high school. It was nothing fancy, but I did like step up and help out as a janitor one summer when they were down. That's something to feature. Stepped up, went above and beyond job duties, helped train others on things. You just have to really look and think about like, was there a challenge? Was there a problem? And I think I have that. I have a free resume builder guidebook on my website. People are welcome to go out there and check. And a common one is like STAR or PAR. If you Google these later, they're very common with resumes and with interview prep. I do find that oftentimes it doesn't seem to inspire people the way I hope it would. So I often ask, what are you most proud of? Like when you look back at that role, what are you really proud of? Is that on your resume? That usually triggers a few things. Then the next thing I ask is, what was a headache? Like, be real with me. Did you have complete 100% staff turnover and you were the only like stable force in that department over 2 years? That should be on your resume because the context of that turmoil speaks volumes to the other accomplishments that you had. And then next, what do you think the employer wants to see based on their needs and the goal positions you're going towards? So take a look at those things. So that's a lot of things, but really when you kind of stand back, it's not as complicated as you think because you just really need to get targeted and what do they need to know and focus there versus like going super large and like spinning wheels. That would be my advice.
That was fantastic. Honestly, amazing. A couple things that really struck with me was color. In my position, I am a hiring manager, and so I do look at resume after resume after resume. The color is one that I smiled in. So while you were speaking, even our YouTube audience won't be able to see me smiling, but I thought, oh yeah, that does catch my eye every time I see color. I personally don't like the bold colors,
Mm.
the the neon yellows or the neon greens or but if it's a subtle color, yes, it absolutely stands out. I do believe that we have the upload from the resume into the organization's hiring platform for HR. However, we do still see the PDF format of the resume, of the cover letter, of the references. That's spot on. If I see any type of color that is immediately, consciously or subconsciously, stands out in my mind as, oh, this is interesting. This person's creative. The other thing is the wasted space. I see so many resumes with wasted space. And I do think it's hard for people sometimes to differentiate between bragging and logic. Like, what is the truth? What did you do? What was the task that you did? Well, it sounds like I'm bragging. Well, then write it in a way that you're not bragging. Write it in a way that's factual, but put some of those minuscule things down. And I really like the fact of what were you proud of and what was a headache, and how do we translate that onto a resume to show progression, to show courage, to show that you stuck with a tough situation. There's ways to do that. So that was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will add, leave detail oriented off, strong communicator off, strong work ethic off. Like these very, like, I call them generic. These generic soft skills are great. Everybody right now is putting those on their resume and cover letter. And I just recently did like a couple corporate projects, and I can assure you, everyone still thinks everyone's a bad communicator in like
Mhm,
corporate America. Tends to
mhm.
be like one of the things that comes up over and over. And frankly, detail orientation is often a thing too, like whether it's not checking your emails or like not getting all of the things filled out. And even if you are, showcase that through your results, like showcase that through something you did versus just saying it, because those become so cliche that I just like, those are kind of turned into a pet peeve of mine because I'm like, oh, well, they all say that. So let's stand out.
That drives me right up a wall. If every time I see that, honestly, I ignore it. The other one, I'm a quick learner. Yep, we're all quick
Yes.
learners. Yep. So for different professions, the profession that I'm in, you need to have some type of degree or degrees. We're all quick learners because we're all here. We all basically have the same education. There are some differences, but in general, if I have to see any of those cliches and I'm a quick learner, I honestly roll my eyes and almost move on to the next resume because you're not telling me anything different. So hands down 100%, don't put that stuff on there. Nobody cares. I am here to tell you, nobody cares.
So true.
Yeah. Do you do any coaching with interviewing skills?
Yes, I do. And this is something I'm really passionate about. And I don't know if it's just the clients I've had recently, but I find that this tends to be the number one thing that people let go of. And I find it frustrating because I'm like, if you do nothing else with me or anyone like me in this profession, invest the time and effort in your interview, in your elevator pitch, in your mock interview, because it's so critical. You can have the best resume in the world, the best networking plan in the world, but if you go into the interview and bomb, especially if you're in sales, like it's going to take you so long to find a job. And I think people have like a perception of how they come across an interview. And if I'll ask them like, yeah, have you had any interviews? And they're like, yeah, I've made in the running like 3 or 4 times, but, and they'll give me the line of they went with an internal candidate or they, had someone with a little more experience. I'm always in the back of my head, like if you made it that far multiple times, it's probably very true. Like things happen, we can't control it. But why aren't you focusing on the interview? Because clearly your resume and your networking is already getting you in the door, but folks tend to obsess over the resume and they really need to focus on the interview. And that is definitely something that I help with. Like we'll do a mock interview via Zoom. I record it. I strongly recommend they go back and watch it. This too, you can Google because I'm sure I'm going to botch the name of it, but I think it's called Udly. It's like Yoodli. It's an AI-based interviewing and public speaking software that's cloud-based. So you can go out, sign up for a free account. And a lot of mock interviewers and folks in my profession right now will also offer coaching services via that site. I don't, I just do it through Zoom and do it through my client base. But that's another way to get not only AI coaching, which I think is great, but as most of us know, it's that additional customized personal coaching that can take you one step further. I think those are really good places to start, and you better have an elevator pitch. Like so many times I'm like, okay, if you were on the elevator with the CEO and they're like, oh, what are you interviewing for here? Like, why you? Just like casual conversation, and they have some like 30-minute tangent on their background and all the things. I'm like, no, short, sweet, succinct. Like, what can you do for them with a smile on your face? Like, it's so important to practice that. So I do love to help folks with the interview part, but I think a lot of people are scared to be vulnerable and put themselves out there and get that feedback. But an employer cannot do that for legal reasons. And even if they do, they are giving you soft, easy, like softballs to just be like, yeah, we had someone with a little more experience or a little more confidence. They are not telling you the true thing because they are terrified of being sued. I worked in HR, I can assure you.
I agree with you. I worked in HR for 7 years, all as a generalist and payroll specialist. And I will tell you that it's very clear. I attended some networking programs through the HR SHRM program. And I will say that that is one of the things that they caution you on is be very careful with references, be very careful with feedback. Good to know that all these years later, that's still the same thing. You need to be very careful so you don't set your company or your personal business up for any type of liability.
It's so true. And also, they don't owe you that. Like, I know that we all can employer bash all day long, and it's easy to do that, especially in my field, to attract clients, but they're a business. Like, they owe you nothing. They need to focus on running their business and hiring people. They are not some nonprofit out there like doling out employment advice. So even if it's not just for lawsuit reasons, they're busy. Like, because I've had folks that like on LinkedIn will be like, oh, how dare they not give feedback? And it's like, well, we don't live in an idyllic world. Like, this is reality. Once you're working there, you won't have time to do it either.
No, not at all. How about dress? How has dressing for interviews changed? I obviously with COVID was different, and my co-pilot and I at work, call her that, we do interviews via our WebEx. So again, online, virtual, even if the person is in town, we still do them because we work from home, we're still remote. How has the dress code changed with interviewing, and how do you inform your clients on what to wear? I get that it would be dependent on what position they're going for, but in general, has the dress changed?
I definitely have seen a swing towards more casual, typically business casual. Like I graduated in like '03, the button-up suits and the like really formal corporate attire are probably appropriate at like a CPA firm, a law firm, executive positions, certainly. But I would say typically you can ask the hiring manager, like, what is your dress code, and ask for that. And maybe you dress like a little step up from that. But I think the most important thing is like, did you do your hair? Did you do your makeup? Like, if, do you look clean? Do you look ready for an interview? So even if you're at home, dress like it's an interview and you were going there based on their dress code, because you want to give that professionalism and have it come forward. So I think those are really important.
That's great. What else would you like to tell our listeners before we get your contact information?
That's a good one. I guess I'm a huge, huge proponent of don't give up. If you're feeling really unhappy in your job or career, really take a step back to think about, of the factors you can control, what can you work on? And sometimes it's not finding a new job or new career. I as a perfectionist and overachiever, I was a fan of like the quiet quitting. Like, the HR in me was like, oh, like I totally get why employers are like, this isn't great. But the flip side of that is Like, is some of this due to your own, like your own cause? Like, did you go in checking emails too much? Are you volunteering for too much? Like, are there ways right now you can address in your role that it's like, yeah, I could do this differently, like start taking a lunch break every day and it would bring me some happiness? Is there some coworker drama going on that you just need to remove yourself from? Like, I think there's a lot of added bonus to really focusing on like, what can I control and start doing immediately? Because if you do decide it's time to move on, switch careers, switch companies, whatnot, it's far better to practice those boundaries in your current environment. Don't wait until you jump ship. And now you might have a little of imposter syndrome going on. Like, should they have hired me? Am I the best one? I want to prove myself. Like, practice boundaries every single day on bringing some of that like happiness to your life. But if you do find out that with all that work, you're still really unhappy, take the time to figure out your what. Too many people just jump to, I want a new job. I want out of here. I don't want to be on call anymore. I don't want to work for a school district. I'll do anything where I can just be remote. I want to caution you on the remote. I think I saw a stat that like 13% of jobs are remote and 52% of applications are for remote. Unless you have a really like highly specialized skill set, you may need to have a transitionary role to gain more skills before you're more marketable for a remote role. That's just one instance. Or you may need more training or more certifications. So whatever it is, if you find out you need to leave, figure out your what you're passionate about, what your goals are, because your resume, your cover letter, your networking, even your interview answers, that all goes back to your personal and professional branding. So if you don't know what you're out there peddling, you're kind of just going to be lost and it won't be as successful. So it might take you a couple more months to identify this is the dream job, but then your results will be better after that. So that would be my advice to folks, because I did it. I'm not judging. Like, I don't like this job, throw out my resume for another HR, throw it out for another role. Oh, I have daycare. I got to cover this. Let's go over here. And in hindsight, it's like, should have taken a step back to be like, is this field even a good fit for you? For me, it wasn't. It just wasn't. And there's no shame in that. Like, we all have strengths and weaknesses. So just figure out where yours are a good fit and really have like a strategic plan in place. That would be my advice.
Fantastic advice. How can people get a hold of you, Nikki?
I would say connect with me on LinkedIn. Either send me a connection request or feel free to follow me. And I have a lot of great content out there, but definitely feel free to follow me on there. And then I have 2 free courses on my website and the free job search guide. So that's ryberggroup.com. I highly recommend you go out there and check those out too.
And Ryberg is Ryberg.
Yes, correct.
Are you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram?
No, I'm not on anything. I'm just on LinkedIn, and I do send out an occasional e-newsletter, so you can sign up for that. I offer a lot of free events as well. So if you sign up for my newsletter or on LinkedIn, you'll be in the know on those. And I would love to hear from folks. Right now, I'm actually booked until the fall, but I have a lot of great people I can recommend. So I know we started with like, how do you know who the good ones are? Well, I've vetted them. So reach out if you need anything. And even if it's not me, I'll be happy to connect you with like, this one's good. They're legit. You can trust them, because my goal is just get folks the help they need. I don't care who it's with. It just needs to be who's a good fit for them. And so they get their results.
And let's say that somebody isn't ready to go until the fall. What does your clientele scheduling look like? So let's say that somebody's really busy this summer, but they really want to connect with you. How do they get a hold of scheduling you for fall appointments?
That's great. I would say send me an email and I will have a wait list going and letting people know, hey, mid-August, my calendar turns back on and you can start setting up sessions with me. So I would say just reach out and let me know that. I'll first start taking bookings probably mid-August for after Labor Day.
And then what email address can they reach you at?
Ryberg, so NRYBERG @ryberggroup.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nikki. This was so fascinating.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
For all of our listeners, stay awesome and keep reaching for your anything.